Hello, this is the SMC Journal podcast. I'm Scott Moore, your host. This show is all about performance testing, tuning, monitoring, and anything that has to do with making applications and hardware more efficient by making them perform better. So if that's your thing, you're going to really love this show. Now, I've been doing something very dangerous recently. I've been Googling terms. And one of the terms is Kubernetes performance management, Kubernetes performance efficiency. It's led me down some rabbit trails, and I thought it'd be a great show. So as I did that, I came across this recent article from Jax Magazine, jaxenter.com, and all the things we talk about today I'll definitely share on the show notes and the YouTube video show notes or on smcjournal.com. This article called Kubernetes Cost Management, Challenges and Notable Tools by Saqib Jang. Saqib, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name appropriately. Apologies if not. But it's a really well put together article that talks about challenges that companies are having as the demand for rolling out Kubernetes deployed applications is coming in. So it references a survey done by the FinOps Foundation and the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF. If you've been doing Kubernetes for any length of time, you recognize CNCF. Last summer, they did this survey, and it was 195, almost 200 companies. And out of the questions they asked, what came out of this was 75% of the companies surveyed said they are spending too much on deploying Kubernetes applications. And the reason why is because they're either not monitoring anything at all, or they're monitoring the wrong things. They have no idea where their money's going. There's another survey referenced here from a company called StormForge, which I'm going to introduce you to today, that did a survey last year as well, and about half of the little over 100 respondents said they're wasting money on this because they're probably over provisioning their deployments on their clusters because they don't want to suffer an outage. They want to keep performance high, but it's really hard because of cloud complexity to tell where things are being utilized. If you think about a shared cluster and you've got multiple departments possibly using this, who's using what? What's being allocated to who? How do we tell that? And then how much is being spent on that? It can get complicated pretty quick. Of course, Kubernetes is not the only major cloud cost out there. SQL instances and S3 storage are still, also high on the list of things that money's being spent on. But in this article, which I'm going back to, there are some products that are mentioned here that are designed to help you monitor cost, control cost, and do something about it, make things more efficient. But what it does kind of outline here is finance versus development. In other words, the finance department is saying, hey, we've got some concerns because you're not monitoring this stuff and you're spending a lot of money. We didn't realize the cloud bill was going to be this much. And application development is going, don't you realize how much faster we can deploy applications now? And it's much easier to do. So just leave us alone. The progress is worth the amount of money. There's still got to be some accountability there, right? So that's where this kind of riff is, I guess, developing, if there is one. Some of the products mentioned, one of them is called KubeCost. KubeCost has a free tier and a paid tier for basically giving you insights into where you're spending your money at a cluster level and at other levels. And they have reports that are available. It works with other many different cloud vendors. And so again, I don't know if this is a commercial for them, but I know that the free version gives you about 15 days of monitoring in one cluster. So it just gets you kind of started, get your feet wet. The commercial version gives you a lot more alerts and other things that you would expect to be added on. Another company mentioned is Rafay Systems, who has they have a SaaS platform for helping companies manage the deployment and manage the whole life cycle of deploying Kubernetes-based applications. So they have developed a template where they can deploy KubeCost with every cluster, so you automatically get that monitoring and that visibility of how much you're spending as well. So working together is a great twofold solution. A third company mentioned here is Opsani. This is interesting because the way Kubernetes handles load auto scaling within itself is it has something called the Kubernetes horizontal pod autoscaler. So HPA for short, that's how Kubernetes natively handles autoscaling. Opsani, who does makes a product called Ignite, and they do continuous optimization of your clusters. They have a product called the Opsani Learning Autoscaler, or OLAS, which is a drop-in replacement of this native way that Kubernetes does it, which is maybe better and more efficient. Probably a cost involved, but you'd have to look into that. So that's another way to make things more efficient. Finally, we get to StormForge, and this is where I kind of wanted to get to. StormForge makes a platform for tuning the infrastructure resources and making them more efficient. So of course I'm perking up here now. Not that the other wasn't important, but how I think we save money from a performance engineering standpoint is getting the most bang of the buck for the resources being used. And so this is where StormForge comes into play. And they have this AI machine learning algorithm that makes recommendations for tuning your, say, Java application configuration, things like that. But what makes them different is that they have a load testing component as well. So this led me down the path of looking up StormForge, and I reached out to the company directly because I wanted to know more. StormForge immediately responded and connected me with Erwin Daria of the company, who graciously sat down with me for a few minutes and answered several of my questions that I had about their product. So let's go ahead and bring in Erwin now, and let's I'll show you that interview. Hi, Erwin. Welcome to the SMC Journal.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about you and your company, StormForge.
Yeah, so about me, my name is Erwin Daria. I'm the Director of Technical Alliances here at StormForge. And my personal background is in all things kind of IT infrastructure. I started my career about 25 years ago, working on all the low-level kind of silicon and then metal that go in data centers. And that led me to infrastructure and application platforms, and now StormForge. So what we do here at StormForge is we're laser focused on applying machine learning techniques to make sense of all the metric data that come out of these applications that are running in Kubernetes. And then those machine learning techniques help us understand how the application is behaving under load, and then tune the application to meet the needs and business targets of our customers.
Awesome. So I'm doing research right now on Kubernetes performance management and optimization, specifically around Kubernetes. So as I was doing this, I kept seeing StormForge in the search results, and then reading articles, and StormForge is being mentioned. And so I probably should have known about you a year ago, but I'm just finding out now. But I found this article by Platform 9, and I'll show that to the audience here. But an interesting comment in this, which I will share in the show notes, is Kubernetes, I'm just going to quote it here. It says, Kubernetes is designed to do many things automatically, but it doesn't automate its own performance management. So getting the most out of it, out of your infrastructure, requires being smart about how you design and how you configure the components. And I'm thinking also how you optimize it. So you agree?
I do agree. I do agree.
And is that the problem that StormForge solves?
It is. And I think it's helpful to understand that when we do performance optimization, generally, I like to illustrate it as kind of like two sides of a slider bar, right? So on one hand, we've got performance engineering, ensuring that the application is behaving in a way that meets all of our SLAs and SLOs, right? For our end user customers, user experience, etc. On the other side of that slider bar is generally somebody that's not customer facing in finance telling us, hey, we have to meet all those SLAs and SLOs, but we've got this giant bill in the cloud, and we got to figure out how to find that right balance between ensuring that our applications are behaving in the way that we want them to behave under the appropriate performance load, and then minimizing or optimizing resource utilization so that we're not paying too much for that user experience. And so really, across our portfolio of tools that make up the StormForge optimization solution, we include both the ability to consume load generation performance testing as a service, along with our machine learning backend that helps tune the Kubernetes parameters for all the applications deployed on the platform, under those conditions to optimize the resource utilization.
So here's what was interesting as I started reading about StormForge is that you have this machine learning engine that would tune and I guess advise on things that you should do to optimize Kubernetes, but you also have a load testing component of that as well, which is it's unique because I know of other players that only offer the tuning advice, but they don't offer a standalone load testing product as part of that. Can you talk about that and how they work together?
Yeah. So for you, Scott, or anybody in your audience, you understand the importance of performance engineering, right? Being able to, in a pre-production setting, ensure that the applications that you're pushing into prod behave in a specific way under some kind of known scenario, right? And the known scenario is we have professionals in our customers and in our lives or in our kind of technology spaces that their job is to create performance tests and then run them against a pre-production environment and get a clue as to whether or not the application can meet those needs. So the other side of that coin is, okay, if you know the performance test, and that's what we provide, one of our tools in our portfolio is StormForge performance testing. It allows our customers to generate a performance test scenario using a cloud service, and then instantiate that performance test from anywhere in the world. So if you're testing locality, if you've got specific application zones that you want to test and you want the test to come from the same locality as where the application is being hosted, we can support that. And then, our platform is very flexible. So you can use our performance test, but we also, for customers that already have performance testing tools, we can integrate with those as well. But we bundle in our performance testing with our machine learning optimization to make it super easy. The other side of that kind of dynamic is once you're generating load against an application and it's behaving in a specific way and you're getting metrics from it, maybe P95 latency for 100,000 transactions every couple minutes, it looks like a certain way. The other question is, how do you look at those metrics and then determine what to do about the configurations or the parameters in that application to maybe move that number up or down, right? You've got an SLA or an SLO. How do I get that P95 latency for 10,000 transactions every couple minutes to sub 500 microseconds, whatever that is, 500 milliseconds? Mm-hmm. And that's the other side of our solution. We employ machine learning that can rapidly iterate various configurations against that consistent load test to find that right configuration for your application.
You talk about those types of metrics that come out of a test or out of your tuning engine. If somebody runs this, what's the output that I would see? In other words, what kind of things would you show me that would tell me what to do? In other words, what kind of graphs and charts would I see?
Yeah. So all of our essentially secret sauce is in the machine learning algorithms that drive how close to quote unquote optimal a configuration is against multiple metrics, right? So when I say metrics, generally optimization isn't just a simple regression to find the lowest cost or the highest performance. Usually, and then the way that we look at optimization is finding the balance between those metrics, right? So when we design an experiment, and in our nomenclature, when we help a customer optimize, we do that in the construct of what's called an experiment. And the experiment is essentially a YAML file that dictates to our solution what application we care about, so a namespace with some label selectors in the Kubernetes world. What parameters do we want to give the machine learning to push and pull, like all the knobs and buttons that we want the machine learning to tune? And then what metrics do we want to meet, right? And in many cases, most cases, our guidance to our customers is to find two competing metrics. And those metrics can be things like P95 latency, which we want to drive down, but then maybe resource utilization or cost, which we also want to drive down. So if you remember, I described performance engineering and kind of financial responsibility as like two sides of the same slider. That's effectively what we're asking the machine learning to do. Now, when you run an experiment, the system orchestrates rapidly testing various configurations and measuring the results of that. And then we provide that all the results of that in a GUI. And if you were to look up, we have got many demos and representations of what that GUI looks like. But essentially, you're going to find an X and Y axis kind of graph with scattered dots. And our machine learning will find what's called a Pareto front, which is this kind of bend between the two axes that represent all of the various optimal configurations. And when we say optimal configurations, we mean the ones that meet each of the individual criteria, so the most highest performance and maybe the lowest cost, and everything that represents kind of that bend between, sliding that slider. And then when you click on one of those configurations, not only will we show you what the difference is, the delta in performance and resource efficiency from your baseline, which is kind of, the baseline is going to be your base configuration that the developer is going to push into the configuration management system, but we'll also show you where the trade-offs might be. So you may find the exact middle of that bend, and it'll represent an 80% reduction in resource optimization and a 20% improvement in P95 latency, just using that as an example. Mm-hmm. But we give you a point in reference for all the configurations next to it, right? So as a application platform owner, you can go to your business stakeholders and you can say, okay, Mr. Application Owner, Mr. Developer, whoever the stakeholders are, these are the array of configurations that meet our individual metrics that we care about, like P95 latency and resource utilization. Tell me which one of these dots are the ones that you want our application to be configured as. And then when you click on that dot, we have a pretty handy-dandy UI element that lets you configure or export that as YAML. And then you can just take that configuration, again, import it into your configuration management, and then push it into prod.
Wow. So this really lends itself to something that you said earlier, and when we first started talking, you said that StormForge is laser focused on Kubernetes deployed applications.
That's right.
So, playing devil's advocate, if you are after you want customers to use your product that obviously are using Kubernetes, but many of these customers also have other interfaces. It's not HTTP, for example. It's something else, or they have legacy applications that are. Would there ever be a consideration by StormForge to take on some of these others and apply the same AI engine, or integrate with another load testing tool that does interface with something that's a legacy protocol, for example, that you would then be able to leverage this, or is it's Kubernetes and that's it?
So that's a complicated series of questions, or I think the questions are not complicated. I think the answers can be a little bit complicated. So the first one that I want to tackle is, are we laser focused on Kubernetes only? So the answer to that is, right now, our strategy is around Kubernetes because we believe that all the investments and the adoption of Kubernetes are proving that, at least in the medium term, this is the future of application deployment platforms. The headwinds that we might find with customers shifting to Kubernetes, you hear all these terms, app modernization, digital transformation, whatever that might be. What our research and what our customers are telling us is that one of the reasons why so many applications kind of still live in legacy is because of all the friction that is found in deploying applications to Kubernetes. Now, the answer to that is there are a lot of things that make deploying an application, refactoring an application to Kubernetes difficult. What we're focused on, where we can apply our machine learning to very quickly make it easier for customers to deploy to Kubernetes. So in the areas of, hey, I'm doing a lift and shift, I got a bunch of JVMs, I want to containerize them and push them to Kubernetes. In that workflow, it's quite common to just over provision everything. And then you find that it doesn't run that well, and it's very expensive. That's one scenario that we can apply our machine learning in that kind of lift and shift kind of methodology. And if we do that, we believe if we do that well enough, not only can we help the Kubernetes adoption curve, we can do that, and when customers land, they'll be in a much better operational place because they'll have much less bandwidth trying to troubleshoot all the things that our machine learning can troubleshoot for them. So your second question was around performance testing. And you've got customers that have, legacy performance testing. They've got a bunch of JMeter scripts. They've got a bunch of, load runner, whatever that might be. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Our optimization framework is completely extensible. So we can actually unplug essentially our performance testing and plug in a customer's performance testing as well. The only caveat being that it should be something that can be executed by script. Now, in many cases, our customers do choose to use our performance testing because our performance testing is as a service, and we handle the deployment and management of the infrastructure, the load generation, and everything. So you don't have to worry about right sizing the nodes or anything like that. And then your last question, I think, was related to would there be anything that would motivate us to apply our machine learning to other types of use cases? Mm-hmm. And I think there is nothing that precludes us from making those decisions, but I think our immediate focus is Kubernetes for all the reasons that I just described. And then as the market changes, matures, we have ultimate confidence in our engineering, our data scientists, our machine learning experts here at StormForge, that we can apply these optimization techniques to almost anything. But the market isn't telling us to do that other than in the places that we've made investments and our focus is.
That's awesome. And I really like that answer. You've mentioned several times our customers are telling us this, the market is telling us this, you're listening to your customers, and I think that's really important. So thank you very much for being on the SMC Journal.
It's my pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for having us.
So there you have it. If you want to find out more about StormForge, there's a couple of other links that I have found online. Here's one of them that was recently updated, January 25th, on softwaretestinghelp.com, how to optimize Kubernetes applications with StormForge. Sort of a detailed review of the product. So you got sort of a little bit of an intro and commercial from Erwin there, but if you look at this article, you'll see the performance testing aspect of this and how it works. There's a little bit of a diagram here. And then it actually speaks to the type of performance test that they typically can do and recommend. Here's an example of a script, an automated script that they use for load testing. I'm sure it's very simplified, but it's based on their own domain-specific language, their DSL, which is based on JavaScript. And then it shows an example of what a test report might look like from this product. So I thought that was an interesting article, which I'll share. And there's some pretty good blog articles out there on their own website that focus on optimizing Kubernetes as well. So if this is what you're looking for, that you're actually doing the kind of Google searching that I am to, how do you manage the performance of Kubernetes and optimize it, you're going to come across these same links as well, but these will help you. A couple of other interesting articles that I did find that I'll share is one from Medium. It's a few years old, but I still think it's pretty relevant. How to prioritize Kubernetes performance, cluster utilization, and cost optimization. Sort of gives you a head start on here's kind of what to expect as you start implementing this first few days, and how to kind of set some goals, and what are the goals I want to reach, what are the things I want to monitor, and what are some of the tools. And obviously those things change very rapidly in this area, but I thought that was interesting. Also want to mention this interesting repo that I found called AutoTune. I guess you pronounce that Cruise, AutoTune. And it talks through what AutoTune is. It's not to make your vocals sound perfect if you're recording, which that's what I always think of. But it basically takes your SLOs, your service level objectives, and tries to accept that as input and then optimizes your application based on that. And it starts talking about, hey, I want a 500 millisecond or less response time with this URI. It kind of tells you how it would go through decision making to do that. So check out that repo if you have some time. Don't want to go any further or end this broadcast without mentioning my friends at Akamai, who have also just refreshed their website and content, including some videos on their YouTube channel that specifically talk to optimizing Kubernetes, and they've updated it just in the past few days. So definitely check out Akamai about this new article that you can download. I don't think you even have to register for it, on how to do autonomous optimization of Kubernetes applications. And there is a YouTube video that goes along with that as well. So my brief commentary on this, other than what we've already talked about, is, you've got this finance versus development conversation that definitely needs to happen. Monitoring the right things around cost, efficiencies, those things definitely good things to do. Shine the light on it. Let's find it out. But I think that companies are looking to vendors now. You can see this pattern of don't just tell us where a problem is at or where we're inefficient. Tell us what to do to fix it. And if you can, let's earn some trust with us to where we know you're not going to break stuff all the time, and go out there and fix it for us, because things are not going to get less complex. We all know that. So how we deal with that complexity is hopefully we can build something, that an intelligent type of mechanism that will find it and help us fix it, or do most of the heavy lifting for us, so we can move on to other things that are more productive than just firefighting all the time. And I think in the past, just traditional testing and monitoring and reporting and analytics are just kind of, yeah, we've got a flashlight now, we're shining on it, but let's help us do something about it. I think that's what companies are asking from vendors, and that's what vendors are now trying to respond with some of these products. So what do you think? This is the part where I want to hear from you, because I want to know, are you struggling with that? At your company, are you seeing this huge increase in demand to deploy Kubernetes, and you're struggling with how to implement it, how to monitor it, how to make it most efficient, and how to deal with the cost of your cloud bill? How are you dealing with it? What are the solutions that you're deploying for that? You can always reach me at scottmoore.consulting. There's a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and my Twitter handle is loadtester. I can also be found now on Instagram and Facebook. You can also reach me by email at this address, help@scottmoore.consulting. So let me hear from you. I'd really like to thank our sponsors for this program, including Micro Focus, makers of LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, and Cloud, as well as a new sponsor that we have on the show, which is Folk Consulting. Now, I've known Ryan Folk for over 10 years, and he's got some really good consultants working for him. They've been doing this as long as I had, and they're personal friends of mine. So if you're looking for more high impact quality consulting services, specifically around application deployment, application management, performance, analytics, digital management, things like that, contact Ryan Folk over at Folk Consulting, and you can reach them at folkconsulting.com. There's another picture of their URL that you can go to, and we really thank you for sponsoring the SMC Journal. And those of you who can, please contact these sponsors of ours and let them know that you're thankful that they're supporting the performance community. Have you subscribed to the YouTube channel? Another way you can support me is if you like this content, if you could subscribe, maybe give me a like, and also give me that feedback of what you like about the show, what you don't, what you think we should change. We do listen to you on that, so just let me know. That's our show for today. I'm Scott Moore for the SMC Journal podcast. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time, where it's all about performance. Bye-bye.